because what works for me is working for me because of the experiences that I've had, and I'm connected to this thing here that's helping me. But someone who grew up in a very different environment, has different, psychological things that are working for them, this may not be the thing for them for whatever reason. Of course, all roads should lead to to whoever, to heaven, whatever you want to call it, but they don't for every person, and that's why it's important to figure out, like, things like mindfulness and connecting to yourself is going to help to overcome these things, instead of, I guess, with the psychology stuff, learning how to manage them in the moment.
Mhm. Yeah. How to manage them in the moment. And, there's this kind of this sense of psychology almost being a collusion with the status quo. Like there's something wrong with you, you're deviating from the norm. So we need to get you back on track to be with the rest of us.
Welcome to the Queer Quest podcast, your beacon of light and sprinkle of glitter in the queer community. I'm your host, Cristiano Green, CEO and founder of Queer Quest and a transformation coach for queer individuals. And together, we're embarking on a journey of transformation. Each week, we bring you a new training topic or connecting with visionary queer leaders in healing and coaching, diving deep into conversations that inspire growth, celebrate diversity, and empower you to live authentically. So wherever you are, settle in and let's get ready to unlock the vibrant potential within. This is where your quest begins. Hello, all you fabulous souls, and welcome to another episode of the Queer Quest podcast. I'm your host, Cristiano Green, the CEO and founder of Queer Quest and a transformation coach for people in the queer community. This week on the podcast, we've got a very special guest in the house. We have Tyler Wasson, who is a queer men's mindfulness coach and psychologist. And we're going to have a really in-depth conversation today all about the topic of loneliness, specifically for people in the queer community. So welcome, Tyler, to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you here. And as I said, we're going to be talking about loneliness because we know from the work that we do that majority of people who come to us at some point are suffering with loneliness. When you look at the statistics out there, over 70% of people in the queer community suffer from loneliness at some point in their life. So it's a big, big problem because that's double the rest of the general population when you look at the statistics. So that we start on the right stretch, right frame, can you define in your terms, what does loneliness mean to you?
For me, loneliness is primarily about disconnection. Uh,
Disconnect. Yeah.
disconnection. So when I was beginning to look at this topic a couple years ago, I started, like any good researcher, I started looking up the traditional definitions and found a lot of references to being alone and the emotional experience of being alone. And it's an emotion. Loneliness is an emotion.
Yeah.
And th- there were way too many references to being alone or being in solitude for my comfort. And so that's why I started to um, redefine it for myself as this idea of disconnection. Because I started to discover that simply being alone did not necessitate that I would feel lonely.
Definitely not. No.
And some of my loneliest experiences were with a lot of people around. And that to me totally just shot too many holes in the traditional definitions of loneliness for me to keep subscribing to that view of loneliness. And so disconnection really seemed to be the theme that resonated with me.
I see. I see. I see. And so if you find that, say, disconnection is kind of what you term as loneliness, then what is the opposite? Of course, the opposite of disconnection is connection. What would the opposite of, say, loneliness be in your terms as well?
The opposite of loneliness in terms of connection would be this profound sense of connection with myself, with my surroundings, with other people for sure. I don't want to downplay the interpersonal.
Of
Uh,
course.
just that the interpersonal, I think, gets way too much attention when we're talking about loneliness.
And I think it's also a like it can be the catalyst in the sense like if you are feeling lonely, the interpersonal is going to play up. But if you're feeling, as you said, connected, you're going to notice a difference with when you're with other people as well, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I'm sure we'll dive into this a lot deeper as the conversation goes on, but uh, from my perspective as a mindfulness coach and just a mindfulness practitioner for many years,
Yeah.
it really comes down to connecting with your experience, which is very kind of ethereal. It's because of
Well, I
way of describing it, but mindfulness essentially comes down to connecting with, if you're talking about connecting with your breath, the breath isn't a physical object to connect to. It's an experience, it's a sensation.
yeah.
It's connecting with the experience of like, wow, I'm inhaling right now. I feel that in my chest. I feel that in my stomach, my belly. I feel the exhale coming out. That is connecting to something that is very ephemeral. But even though it's ephemeral, that sense of connection can still be there and it can still last long after that breath has passed.
It's about being present, I guess, as well, right? Because you're in the moment, you're present. You're like I said, you're in your body, you're connecting to your breath, which is the experience, but you're not off somewhere else with your mind thinking about, oh, I haven't like, why can't I find someone, or be like, why am I like, why do I feel like my friend group doesn't connect with me or get me? Like, of course, these are some of the thoughts that people would have around the sense of loneliness, but when you're present, you're focused in that moment, which is, as you said, is also connection as well, right?
Right, right. There's a lot of emphasis in mindfulness practice on identifying your thoughts, being able to observe your thoughts as these products of your mind, that are not necessarily always accurate. Not always well, helpful to be thinking the thoughts that spontaneously arise in my mind. They can take me down a rabbit hole that's very, in some cases, destructive. Um, but if I can recognize that, oh, this is my mind just doing its thing again. We're just going around this merry-go-round, one more trip around.
Once in on, yeah,
And I can come back to, well, if I'm not going to be absorbed by that, what can I be absorbed in? Because I will most likely be absorbed in something. And so I can bring my attention back to my breath, back to my body, and connect there and find eventually, maybe not at first, the breath is not always a pleasant thing to connect to. But I can eventually find some sense of home, of being home, being safe
yeah,
in my own being.
I love that. Hmm. So I can imagine you would have had your own journey when it comes to loneliness and either overcoming it or managing it. You want to share us a little about your journey there, and also then maybe talk a bit about like how do you define it? Do you think that people can overcome it, or do you think that people just manage things day to day by certain practices? Like share your experience with us.
As I was describing earlier as we were chatting, and I'm sure we'll talk about the ebook that I wrote in a little bit.
Yes.
But as I described in there, when I came out, I had this mistaken belief that, oh, this is why I haven't gotten into a relationship yet. I've been looking for the wrong thing all this time. You know, now that I've figured it out and now that I'm being honest with myself about who potential romantic partners can be, and now that I'm becoming more comfortable with the idea of pursuing that, I'm going to find it. And my loneliness will disappear. Um, and maybe I'm alone in this, but for some reason it just didn't happen that way. Um,
Not alone. Hmm.
Sometimes the hunt for the relationship was the thing that made me feel most disconnected from myself.
Not that you needed someone to fix you or help you to not feel lonely. A person was going to do that for you, right?
Of course, my missing puzzle piece.
And that was when you think of it, like it feels like it makes sense, right? I feel lonely. Getting a relationship or getting new friends means I'm not going to feel lonely anymore, right? That's what it logically sounds like. It makes a lot of sense, you know.
I mean, it's the thing that's most promoted in any love song. You complete me. You're my breath. You're my one and only. Of
Yeah, it's living as without you.
course, love. I love the songs. I will sing them hour to the top of my lungs. But then I catch myself being like, "This is bullshit." But they're so great songs. I won't stop. But the thing is that that's just one way in which that messaging kind of just seeps in to our into our not our DNA. I don't want to say it.
And then it also accelerates those feelings that you have. So if you're feeling lonely and you hear this messaging and it's not working for you, it makes you feel worse, you know, or it can make you feel worse, I should say.
Yeah, it seems to me that socially, like the social messaging is that being in a relationship is the ultimate achievement.
Mm.
All it is your ticket to happiness and contentment. Um, the many people's greatest fear is ending up alone.
Dying alone. Yeah. I'm not going to have someone to take care of me or whatever it is, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So in terms of my own journey, like that, I didn't realize that that was what was keeping me lonely, and um, that I needed to take maybe a different approach, a different mindset around my loneliness. It was only after, you know, I don't want to credit mindfulness with, changing the world, and like, um, it's not a magic bullet. It's not a cure all. But for me, it was after several years of practicing mindfulness pretty consistently. I became very serious about my practice that I started to realize, you know what? I'm feeling a lot more content just in general.
Yeah.
I mean, I even found myself not shopping as much, not not needing all the newest things. I found myself like when I first moved to LA, I felt so validated by being able to drive to Beverly Hills and go to Rodeo Drive where, Prada, Gucci, all these places. Um,
Yeah.
I just felt so validated being able to obtain. Um,
The material things felt like, you know, you're able to collect things. And if I have these things, it's going to mean X, Y, Z, or I'm going to feel like, because you get the rush, you get the sense of it. But as you know, that doesn't last.
it doesn't last. It lasts much shorter than it's worth.
Mm.
Um, but I found just kind of almost accidentally that these changes were happening, and the only thing that I could point to was my mindfulness practice. That I was feeling more content, more willing to be alone. I will say that the pandemic was a forcing function. You know, being at home alone a lot more than I was used to, working from home, doing everything from home.
Yeah.
Sometimes going days without seeing another person face to face.
Wait.
Uh, yeah, was uh, it was a forcing function, and that's when my practice really took off. That's when I became even more serious about my practice. Um, and that's also when I started to realize, oh shit, I can handle this. This is actually I'm actually, you know, I hate to say it this way, but I'm actually maybe even sometimes enjoying this. And I felt myself being so so odd compared to all the people that were struggling, because it was a struggle for most people, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I know that some people today are willing to say like, "Oh, this was a good thing that came out of the pandemic." But most people really struggled.
Oh, 100%. I know that for myself. Like, I struggled at the beginning of it, the first, say, 3 to 6 months. I was drinking more, like, pretty much dealing with chaos at work, like having a team of 300 that you have to run from your living room. Like everyone's going crazy, and yeah, I was managing mine with alcohol and drugs at that point, and it forced me to get clean. And so the first half, like I said, was chaotic, but if I look at it as a whole, it actually forced me to look at myself and go, this is a real issue right now. And I sorted it out and got out of that career, moved in, changed it around and started my own business. So it definitely maybe fast tracked where I was going, but maybe like it condensed 2 years into 6 months because you had introspection time, that self actualization, self awareness of just seeing yourself and not being able to mask it by being out with people, you know?
Right. Right. Totally. Totally. So yeah, the pandemic was definitely a turning point for me, and I found myself, because the pandemic started about 6 weeks into me moving from San Francisco to Oakland,
Okay.
which is, it's not it is kind of a major move if you live in the Bay Area. It's like, oh my God, people who don't cross that bridge to see each other. Um, but it was, I was not starting over, but it was a major change for me to be in this new apartment, a new area, and 6 weeks after I moved in, the pandemic hit and the whole city shut down, and I was now isolated in this new apartment, trying to f install shelves by myself. Uh, and I don't know, I I found myself really relying on, or starting to get back into relying on nature. I was raised on a farm in the Midwest,
Well, yeah.
and I never realized until I started putting some potted plants on my balcony in that new apartment in Oakland, how much I missed, like, even getting hands dirty and taking care of a plant. Um,
I can see you've got plenty behind you, so yeah.
my apartment, my house here is filled with plants. I'm lucky enough to have moved into this little studio, bungalow about 2 years ago, and the reason I moved into this place was because it has a very tiny courtyard in the front, and there's an avocado tree that the squirrels steal all of them before they get to grow and ripen, but I get to feed those squirrels by hand. Like, I get to hold up a walnut or a pecan and feed them by hand, or I get to plant flowers here. I get to take care of the plants that were pre-existing, and it it just made me feel like, wow, I feel very content, like more content than ever in my life, to be able to just have things to care for. Some people have pets. I can't have pets where I live. Well, I don't know if I would want that kind of responsibility anyway.
Dog's a cat and we're about 50. So yeah, it's a lot of responsibility.
It is. I dog sit occasionally for friends, and a week at a time is good enough for me. Um, but taking care of these plants just makes me feel so connected. And that's how this all started evolving, and the realizations that came. I did not set out to try to fix my loneliness when I started practicing mindfulness, or when I started getting back into gardening and taking care of plants. Um, but it's it's the thing that saved me. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And so already before that point, you'd already done all your studies in psychology and you've been practicing as a psychologist. during this time, what do you think the major difference is? Because obviously, you study for many years, like to be a psychologist. And then, of course, you get into your mindfulness practices, and that's the thing that helps. What do you think's different when it comes to, like, say, a psychology approach and learning in the background, to then really realizing that, like, I'm actually feeling lonely, I'm not feeling great, connected, disconnected, whatever kind of words were used, to then getting into your practice and realizing that this is the thing that's got you there?
Yeah, I think
Because obviously psychology does help people in a sense, right? Of course, like, it's built on that, and you wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't. But of course, as you said, you're now doing more mindfulness and coaching and stuff like that, and there's a big differences, right? So, what would you say are the key things that you find as a difference, and why you feel like I said, mindfulness has been helpful in sort of the psychology aspect?
no. Well, this is a little bit of a soapbox of mine, and I'll try to hold back a little. But it's, um,
Oh, man, but yeah,
I have I have come to be convinced that the whole world of psychology is way too overly focused on symptom reduction. And mindfulness kind of goes to the core. So mindfulness, a lot of spiritual practices go straight to the core. Instead of just trying to make you feel better, they try to make you better.
yeah. Instead of putting a Band-Aid on something, you fix the wound.
Because plenty of psychological theories would suggest that loneliness is because of being alone, of not having enough deep connections with other people, which, as I said earlier, I'm not downplaying the importance of interpersonal connections. I do think those are vital to
Oh,
find life. Um, but there's almost no talk in the mainstream psychological theories about connecting with your own breath, connecting to your own ephemeral experience of life, of connecting with nature, um, of connecting with the elements. That's way too woo-woo for Western psychological theories. So that's why I feel like psychology doesn't really have a whole lot, at least mainstream psychology doesn't really have a whole lot to offer me um, when it comes to loneliness.
yeah, I agree. I think, as from my perspective, because I also have been, to psychologists and counselors when I was younger, to figure out, trying to fix the problem that, that was broken, whatever, that's kind of what I felt like. There's something wrong with me. I'm broken. I need all this help. And I would go there, and I'd go and see this person for 6 months. And then I'd be like, okay, maybe I should go out and see how I feel. And then 6 months or a year later, I feel like I need to go back to someone, because I feel that when it comes to the world of, say, psychology and counseling, it's kind of designed to keep you coming back, that you need this to support you. Now, of course, therapy, coaching, all that stuff's great. People need other people to help them, support them throughout life. As you said, interpersonal connections are vital. It's when you feel like you have to rely on that person, instead of them empowering you to figure out what is the right thing that's for you. Because what works for me is working for me because of the experiences that I've had, and I'm connected to this thing here that's helping me. But someone who grew up in a very different environment, has different, psychological things that are working for them, this may not be the thing for them for whatever reason. Of course, all roads should lead to to whoever, to heaven, whatever you want to call it, but they don't for every person, and that's why it's important to figure out, like, things like mindfulness and connecting to yourself is going to help to overcome these things, instead of, I guess, with the psychology stuff, learning how to manage them in the moment.
Mhm. Yeah, how to manage them in the moment, and there's this kind of this sense of psychology almost being a collusion with the status quo. Like, there's something wrong with you, you're deviating from the norm, so we need to get you back on track to be with the rest of us.
Are you ready to embark on a journey of transformation that's uniquely yours? Welcome to QueerQuest, the world's first and best personal development platform created by and for the queer community. Imagine a space where your authenticity isn't just accepted, it's celebrated. A place where you can grow, learn, and thrive alongside a vibrant community that understands you. At QueerQuest, we're more than just a platform. We're a family. Connect with like-minded individuals, share your stories, and empower each other to reach new heights. Our tailored courses are designed to address the unique experiences of the queer community, from self-love and confidence building to career advancement and beyond. We've got you covered. It's time to step into your power and transform your journey. Join us today at courses.queerquest.vip, see what we're all about, and sign up to begin your quest.
Yeah.
And that leaves no room for personal experience, personal expression, for creativity, just for diversity, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, there, I can think of nothing more subversive to the status quo than kind of peering underneath the hood, so to speak, of using mindfulness to really kind of go beneath the surface to the very raw elements of your experience.
Yeah.
See them as they are, without opinion, without judgment, uh, without story,
Yeah.
raw experience of the moment.
And so I'm assuming this is why, as you said, you've done all your years of psychology, you're transitioning, into coaching, right? Talk to us about that kind of journey and the decision that you made to go, hey, look, you know what? I feel like I've evolved, and maybe the practice that I was, the model, the model I was using to help people, it hasn't evolved with me. So I need to find something that supports that so I can help people in the way that feels right for me right now. How's that transition been going for you? And how does that help as well people who are dealing with loneliness as well? The shift, right?
Yeah. So, the decision to transition into more of a coaching role and to kind of try to steer my business efforts in that direction really came about because I felt that after getting licensed in California, just you know, I have to renew my license every 2 years. I can only practice with people located in the state. I have all of these, um, yeah, for good reason. The ethical code is there. The legal and ethical codes are there for good reason. Um, but there's so much over management, over restriction when it comes to what types of support and uh, what you can offer to your clients, how you can work with them. Um, dealing with managed care, needing to use evidence-based, well-researched theories, not being able to kind of come up with your own model based on your own experience for people who might relate to you. Like that is not okay. And it is for a therapist to do. You cannot do. Um, with coaching, there's quite a bit more freedom, maybe a little bit too much. There are some rogue coaches out there that maybe should check themselves. Um,
And some of these road coaches don't obviously have any background or training, and they just go in there and do it, which is,
some can call themselves a coach,
correct.
which is great for people who are responsible and knowledgeable. Um, so yeah, that's what it was really about freedom for me. That's why I decided to move into coaching. And because mindfulness is such a passion of mine. There's an approach that I use with a lot of my therapy clients called acceptance and commitment therapy that is a mindfulness-based therapy approach. But it doesn't quite get to the depth that I would like to go with people. Um, there are even pieces of the ACT or acceptance and commitment therapy approach that I incorporate into my coaching program. So I do value it, but it's
It still has limitations to it. Yeah.
the limitations are still there. So that was one of the big reasons that I decided to transition and go in this coaching direction. Um, as far as how it's been going, it's challenging to put myself out there in a consistent way to market myself, essentially, to get the word out about who I am, what I'm doing, what I'm offering, who I work with, the value that my work could hold for someone.
So different because the psychology, like, you don't know anything about your psychologist that you go to. Like, you don't know, anything about his background other than he's got the degree and maybe they specialize in this kind of, I'm a psychologist for queer people or whatever it is. Like you might have a niche area that you still do it for, but you don't know the backstory. But as in getting coaching and putting stuff out there, marketing online, you kind of have to open the book, the good, the bad, the ugly, and that can be confronting and challenging as well.
And it goes directly against the way I was trained as a psychologist.
Yeah.
We're trained, yeah. We've moved quite a bit of ways away from the idea of being a blank slate as a therapist, but that still persists in subtle ways in your legal and ethical training in grad school.
Yeah.
That self-disclosure is a big fucking deal. Hugging your client is a big deal for good reason. I will I will defend that.
Yeah.
But I think there's just so much it's just so different than what I'm used to.
Definitely. Okay. Yeah. 100%.
I've been a psychologist when did I first get licensed? My first license was in 2013. So I've been licensed
Stretch. Both has it.
my life that way. Um, so putting myself out there has been challenging. Um, but doing things like this is a challenge for me. This is not my comfort zone. Um,
And that's where you'll find the most work.
what I have to do in order to get out there and to establish myself, and it is worth it to take uncomfortable action in pursuit of your goals and
Well, the people who are coming to you as a client, that's uncomfortable action for them, and they have to go on a journey. So it's nice to know that when you peel off the layer behind the person, we're at our core, we're the same as our clients. We still have things, and maybe we're a couple of levels ahead of them in the way that they want in their life, whatever it is that they look for, but it doesn't mean that we're still not trying to move up our own ladder.
right, right. And I think for me, and I'm sure it's the same with you and your clients, there's something so special about being able to find someone to guide you that has shared your experience, who has been there and lived through it, who hasn't just learned about helping you from a textbook, or from helping other people similar to you, but they have actually, in a sense, helped themselves, or gotten the help, but they've actually lived it. They've been through it.
Yeah.
Uh, to be transparent about it, the ebook that I wrote, the coaching program that I've come up with, called the Nature Formula, um, it's all based on my own experience.
And that's the best thing you can do is you've come up with something from you and the journey that you've been on, and like I said, it's helped you. You're your best client, and now I'm sure it's helping the clients that you do have as well. So you're seeing the proof in the pudding, and you've come from, like I said, you've come from the clinical background, along with a spiritual background as well, and you can amalgamate the two to best fit what is needed out there.
and hopefully to collapse the time for a potential client.
Exactly.
Like I said, I didn't realize some of these things about, about what was helping with my sense of loneliness until years down the road. It's like, if I can collapse that for someone, that would be amazing. I could
Totally.
collapse like, a coaching program of a few weeks, a few months. My God.
Which some that would have been wrong sometimes whole life as well. So overcoming 10, 20, 30, 40 years of problems, and you can do it in 3, 6 months, then, you know, sign me up, right?
Right, right. Yeah. So I don't think everyone can fully appreciate what coaches have to offer, like a really good coach. I don't think people can fully appreciate that unless they have experienced coaching themselves or if they've been a coach.
Agree. Yeah.
Uh, it really is a
And
fantastic.
I think to be you have to be on both you have to be able to have been on both sides of it to really understand how to do it. Meaning you have to be a good client and to be a good coach. So
The student of life.
it's like you can't just be one without the other. I think you have to know how to put yourself in the shoes of your client, because you have to say, look, no one's perfect. I know that I need help in certain areas, right? And so I will find the right person for me, get the support that I need, because I believe it's important. If I don't believe in it, why am I doing it as well, you know?
Right, right. So
Yeah.
essential.
Yeah. And so when we're in the ebook, we just mentioned again, you've got the ebook. It's called Breaking Free from Loneliness. And you kind of touched on this before. I'd like for us to go into a deeper one. We talked about the difference between loneliness being an emotion and it being a thought. So I know that this is something that not everyone would understand. So I'd love for you to maybe share a bit more depth about what that actually means.
Yeah. Well, first of all, just a quick clarification. The ebook title is actually Overcoming Loneliness:
Oh,
How I Discovered Deeper Connection Despite Being a Single Queer Man Who Lives Alone. It's probably the world's longest subtitle, but I did that on purpose. But Overcoming Loneliness is the title of the ebook. Um, and so the difference between a thought and emotion, this is a key concept in the ebook, in my worldview. This comes directly from ACT, from acceptance and commitment therapy. Um, that thoughts are kind of like the mental commentary, and thoughts are spontaneous. Sometimes they're influenced by external stimuli. Some You see an object and it causes a thought to arise in your mind. Thought is just the internal chatter. It's the stories. It's the meaning making. It's the opinions. It's the judgments that we make about things. It's the problem solving mechanism in our mind. Emotions, however, they're related to our thoughts. They have a very intimate relationship to our thoughts, but they themselves, emotions, are felt in the body. They are the bodily experience. So, for instance, sadness is something that you feel in your body. It's not just like, oh, I'm sad that, I they were out of my favorite dessert at the restaurant today. Like, oh, I'm disappointed.
mm,
It's not just that story. It's the way that story shows up in your body. The disappointment shows up in your body. And the thing about the reason that this distinction is so important is because we have more control over our thoughts than we do over our emotions.
hmm
Emotions are actually out of our control once they have started. Once an emotion shows up, there's some research that shows that if you were able to kind of distill emotions down to like a single unit of experience, a raw emotional experience would only be able to last up to 90 seconds. And that if it lasts any longer than that, it's due to the interference of our mind, which can look like problem solving, it can look like justification, It can look like ruminating.
Avoidance.
It can look like all of that mental stuff.
Yeah.
It's that's how they are so intimately related, is that they kind of feed off of each other, but more so in my personal assessment is that the thoughts generally cause the emotion. Sometimes emotions can cause thoughts to arise, or you might be thinking something that causes an emotion, and then that emotion causes another thought to arise.
Usually that's it can be a snowball, right? Especially if you've had something that is what is an emotional trigger. It's often you've seen something, your thought associates it with maybe the issue in the past, and it leads you down that spiral, right? So yeah.
Absolutely. So it's a bit of a mental game, and it can sometimes feel like we're splitting hairs when we're differentiating thoughts and emotions. But trust me, it's worth it.
Totally.
It's um. So there was another piece that I was going to reference with thoughts versus emotion.
We're talking about it in relation to loneliness, and so how it shows up for someone if it's an emotion and I guess a thought,
Yeah. So in my ebook, I talk about the 6 basic emotions that I forget the researcher's name who kind of distilled it down to 6 basic emotions. Um, but basically, a lot of people have probably seen at some point in their lives, especially if you've been in therapy, um, what's called a feelings wheel, and
Yeah.
it basically like a bike tire with all these spokes, and in the center is like a pie divided into 6 slices, which are your 6 core emotions, and I'll probably leave one out, but sadness, anger,
Yeah.
surprise, fear,
Happiness.
happiness, and disgust,
Yeah.
I think, might be
That's
the other.
yes.
Yeah, um, and so when we're talking about emotions, we are really talking about those 6 things, those 6 experiences. They can be nuanced, to the nth degree, which is why there are additional layers of that feelings wheel, those concentric circles, where you get things like disappointment or frustration or disappointment again. Um, uh,
Yeah, like so for example, you can be the core might be anger, but it might also be that the real thing is that you're frustrated or you're disappointed or you're hurt, right? Some of this, but the core of it leads down to it being the anger of it, right?
and when you get further out in those concentric circles to the more nuanced emotions, you're really talking about kind of things that are more thought related. They're more related to our opinions, our judgments, our experiences, our memory, our predictions. That's when the mental story piece really starts to shape the emotional experience. But if we really want to get down to brass tacks, get down to the core, we have to let go of the mental story and go straight to the core of what am I feeling in my body?
Yeah.
There's probably only 6 different possibilities here. Um, and so when it comes to loneliness, if I start trying to describe to you that I feel lonely, what I'm going to start describing to you is, well, I'm alone. I don't have a boyfriend. I miss my friends. All of these things. I'm going to start explaining away. I'm going to start telling you stories.
Logically, trying to put it into logic. Yeah.
Right. Um, but if I really let go of those stories and just sit for a moment, what am I feeling in my body? I'll notice that what I'm actually feeling, the emotion that I'm feeling, is closer to sadness than anything. There's a slumping. There's a pit in deep in my stomach. There's all of the physical sensations associated with sadness are there.
Yeah.
And so if I really want to understand my loneliness, I have to understand the emotional aspect of it, but I also have to understand the thought aspect of it.
Yeah.
And as I was describing at the very beginning, this idea of disconnection, that disconnection, feeling or believing that I'm disconnected is actually inaccurate. It's a misguided perception of what's actually happening, of what's real. Um, this gets into more metaphysics and into more
Right.
Buddhist, but I am inextricably connected to the linoleum on the floor in my house. I am inextricably linked to each atom of air around me. I am connected to the sunlight as it pours through my window. Though the sunlight gives me life, I mean, emotionally, it gives me life, but directly and indirectly, it feeds the plants that feed my body. I'm a vegetarian, so I don't tend to eat animals. But for people who aren't vegetarian, even the meat that you eat is fed by the sun because the sun feeds the plants that those animals eat, and then animals that eat them. You know, how far back does this go? I mean, we're inextricably linked to every atom in the universe. So to feel lonely means that I am totally ignoring all these connections all around me. And I know it's quite abstract. And for listeners who are in the depths of their loneliness
Yeah.
and feeling connected to, you know, a mouse that runs through their apartment or to one of their house plants might seem extremely absurd. Um, but it is something that if you look deeply and continue looking deeply over and over again, eventually it has more of a possibility of shifting your worldview about what it means to be connected. And what do I really need apart from what's already around me?
Mm.
My the reason I think this is so important is because, as we were saying earlier, you can feel lonely in a crowd. You can feel lonely in a relationship. And the other people being present does not solve loneliness. In fact, sometimes it can feel more lonely because you have that expectation that is now disappointed,
Yeah.
which is worse than having no expectation at all.
Well, and then you can feel completely lost because if this isn't helping, what will? You know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, so that's kind of my whole spiel, my whole deal around loneliness and connection versus disconnection.
So in finding freedom from the loneliness or overcoming loneliness, as we said from what the book's title is that all about really just connecting to yourself on the deepest of levels and feeling that you can be connected to everything around you and you start opening your eyes to see it.
Yes, it's exactly that. Just opening your eyes to see what's already there. Yeah. Um, and challenging the beliefs that we have built up that
The time that's the biggest key. The problem is that we have learned something and or we've someone told us something and we've made it a truth or a belief in our life and we're living by that truth, by that belief. And that could be the thing that's holding us back from actually not saying the connection or seeing what we need to see in order for us to have the freedom that we need to no longer deal with the sadness, the loneliness, you know?
believing that the love songs are all absolute truth. Yeah.
Lean Dion has got it all covered for us all.
You know, I've caught myself many times listening to All by Myself by Celine.
Oh
And
yes.
the best ballads of all time, and I will listen to it till the day I die.
Yeah.
I've listened out very poorly till the day I die. And bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. You should like, it is not a problem to be alone. It is not a problem because you're actually not alone. You may be in the absence of other people a lot of the time, but you're never actually alone,
No.
even if it means just being with yourself. Um, I was mentioning this to a client earlier today that I don't remember who said it, and I don't remember the verbatim quote, but basically the idea that most of our problems come down to the fact that we are so uncomfortable sitting in a room alone with our own thoughts.
It's true. Many people are.
Most of our problematic behavior.
I find it to be a necessity for me. I need to have that solitude to be there with myself, just to be able to recharge and process certain things that I hadn't processed. Because when you're with people all the time, you're busy doing things or whatever it is. You're connected to their energy, but sometimes you just need to have your own energy and connect to that in order for you to really get grasp how you feel about the situation or process it or move forward.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan, or I have become, I used to hate it, but I have become a huge fan of intentional solitude, of actually taking some time on purpose to be alone, even if I have other options.
Oh, to me, it's vital. Like I said, I'm in a relationship, and so sometimes it's very hard to find it. But I think it's important to make the time to do it and to have your own space. And it could be just to do anything, to go on a walk or whatever it is. Just be on your own, so that you have that time to, like I said, process, to recharge, to do what you need to do. But to me, yeah. Sometimes I wish I had more time, but, it is what it is as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I don't have that problem right now, so.
And it sounds like it's not a problem, so, yeah, it's fine.
And it's not a problem for me. It was for a long time.
Yeah.
It was a big problem. It was a problem that I really spent so much time and emotional energy trying to fix.
It was something that I would say many people, like, whether and a lot of people in the queer community, I've done a lot of relationship coaching and help people to get back out there and date and find relationships and whatnot. And I know that it's something that people spend a lot of their mind on, thinking like, there's something lacking, that I'm not good enough, I haven't got this. And so I want to I want to make it clear that, like, your worth, your value has nothing to do with a relationship. And yes, you may want that, and it's great to have that, and it's great to get that. That's what you want, but you should still feel whole without it, because
Yeah.
you can find it from that place of wholeness, instead of, I need this to fill the lack, or the lack, or the struggle that I have. And if I can get that, I'm going to be fixed. You don't need to do that. Work on feeling fixed, and feeling whole, and you will connect and find the right kind of relationship that's valid and important for you as well. That's
Absolutely. I meant to make that point earlier. So thank you.
no worries.
You need the gas because yes, the whole idea here is let's be fully formed humans before we try to to connect with another person. That is something that the psychological theories do have, is that in order to relate to another person, you have to be a fully formed human yourself. Otherwise, it's just merging. And merging is not a relationship.
Especially when you merge two lonely people, doesn't make a one. It just makes two lonely people that are together, and then ultimately you start putting on those expectations of the other person, and they're not meeting the expectations that you have, and then that ultimately becomes toxic, you know? And so, again, if you want something, start by figuring out, who do I need to become in order to attract that as well. And so we've got to leave here now, but I'd love for you to maybe end with what's one key thing that you love to share that we haven't shared today that you think would be valuable to the listeners, especially on this topic that we've been talking about today with all loneliness coming in?
It can be hard work, but it's so worth it to rethink, to challenge the beliefs that we have been handed about connection, about loneliness, about relationships, and to take the difficult step of turning inward and connecting, first of all, with yourself, but also with your surroundings. And I highly, highly promote the idea of connecting with nature. It is the core of my work now.
Yeah. Getting out there, getting the sun on your skin, going to the beach or the mountains, wherever you are in the world, because, so vastly different.
A tree along the sidewalk. If you're in a concrete jungle, there's a tree somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Find some nature, connect with it, your body, all of that stuff. It's really good for the soul.
Or connections, because they're everywhere. You don't even have to look for them eventually. You will just see them everywhere.
You'll just be connected to them. Yeah. Beautiful. Amazing. Well, thank you, Tyler, for coming on the podcast and having this amazing, deep discussion around the topic of loneliness. I think is a topic that we definitely don't talk about enough, especially in the queer community. So I think it's been a great topic today. How can people connect with you? I know we've talked about your ebook. Do you want to share how people can find it so that, they can go deeper, because there's so much more in there,
Yeah. There's a lot of my own personal journey in that ebook. It's kind of the foundation of my coaching program that I've constructed called the Nature Formula. Um, and so people can find out information about me at my website, which is just simply tylerwasson.com. You can follow me on Instagram at dr.tylerwasson, which is dr.tylerwasson. So those are the best ways to find me and to see what I'm up to, see what I have available to help you out and support you. I've got tons of free stuff that you can download and sign up for.
Beautiful. And we'll link the website below of this here. So if you're hearing it and you don't know how to spell Tyler's name, you just go to the description and we'll have it there for you as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Beautiful. Again, thank you so much for coming on, Tyler. What a great episode. Of course, if anyone out there has any questions or comments or shares, you know how to connect with me. You can comment below, or you can reach out to me across all social media platforms. We'll obviously be back next week with another episode of the Queer Quest podcast. But until then, always remember that you've got this and I've got you. Bye for now.